We continued to rest inside the facility, oblivious to the mistake that we were about to make. Back home, Logan was getting through the research, and he had unlocked new building types, like the Watchtower. This would be the beginning of a major overhaul. After much rest, we felt ready to further explore the crater. What we should have done is gone home. But we went deeper and deeper into the crater, curious as to where it came from. Of course, we ran into more beak things, but we didn't have much trouble with them. After all, we had 3 hive soldiers equipped with polearms, which were designed to take on creatures like this. You could say that we were a bit overconfident. They certainly were tough to take down, but there was a lot of us and not a lot of them. Easy. We marched on. To save ourselves the hassle, we would sneak past a few of them. Swamp raptors are old pests. Fancy seeing them here. But they're benign to us, as long as they're not taking our crops. Oh. I mean, we don't like swamp raptors, but we don't like the look of that either. And then we were in the heart of the crater. It didn't take those beak things long to find us. Sweet Okran, there was a lot of them. They were tearing us apart, and we now knew that these things were carnivores. We had to win this fight, otherwise we would share the same fate as those swamp raptors. Thankfully, we had whittled them down to 1. Well, that was Carnage, but we'd survived, and I think we were going to be okay. Some of them managed to get back up, but we had no problem putting them back down. Looking around the crater, we found some eggs. These were beak thing eggs. It seems we were sitting right in their nest, and Beep couldn't help himself but pinch a couple. The financial value of them was exceptional, but they were quite bulky. Who knows what buyers do with these eggs? On the way back, Beep tried to sneak past a couple of these beak things, but they of course spotted him. We'd have to take on 2 more of them, and we were quite wounded. We fled to a small nearby cave where we could try and rest, as our wounds were stacking. And this place was absolutely teething with beak things. One wrong step and we'd be outnumbered and eaten. Back home at the growing new town of New Hope, we had finished the tower. We had also built a new storm shelter and we were going to up our productivity of armour making and weaponsmithing. Little did the squad at home know that their friends might not make it home. The beaked things seemed to have a nose for sniffing us out. They found us in the cave, and we had to fight again and again. Every fight, we ran the risk of becoming unedible as our wounds got worse and worse. We always harvested the meat to make sure these creatures couldn't get back up. Blend had lost his leg, but fortunately we carry a spare. Hivers do have a tendency to lose their legs. Also, funny story, we left the sleeping bags in the ancient tower, and we couldn't rest. It was up to Burns to head up and try and get them. We chose Burns because if he fell, he wasn't edible. In many ways this was a suicide mission, but it was our only hope. We had no chance of getting out here alive without those sleeping bags and some rest. He made it to the facility, and the big things couldn't go up the stairs. This truly was a forsaken place. One of the creatures lingered, and Burns had to take care of it by himself. Just below Burns, we weren't doing too well. They simply kept coming. Burns' sneaking wasn't great, and these things were very, very aware. We'd have to wait until night to get the sleeping bags back to the rest of us. It was sneaky beaky time, but of course, they knew. Burns was down, but he wasn't dead, and he wasn't edible. He could play dead until they were gone, and then make another run for it. He made it back with the sleeping bags, and so we might just make it out of here. We rested for as long as we could in our fragile little cave under the ancient facility. But now it was go time. Well, go time was postponed. Burns tried to lure the bulk of them away, but there's just so goddamn many. Even now he's up there by himself trying to fight off one straggler. Fortunately, skeletons are incredibly robust. It may have been a bad idea for Beep to take these eggs, as that's maybe what's attracting them. It was night time and we had an opportunity to sneak out now. And we won't forget the sleeping bags this time. One of them found us, but one isn't a problem. We soon made it out of the crater and back into the grid. We could rest here for a while, and then we would move to Shark, and from Shark, we would head home. We had managed to get out of there in more or less one piece. A few limbs were lost. Zim had lost his left arm, and he was unconscious for quite some time from shock. After a quick rest, we were ready to move. Farewell, crater of hell. Some red sabres thought they would attack us, so we took out our frustration on them. We were weary with being beaten up. It was someone else's turn. In the Shark bar, we got talking to a guy called Hammett, who really didn't like slavers, and we kind of agreed with him. If we could ever put our thumb on the scale, we too would end slavery. Hammett was interested in joining us after hearing this. So, we had a new recruit, but he'd probably need some training. He got the warmest of welcome from the rest of the squad, as they were all very tired. We managed to get an arm for Silvershade, who'd lost it to the beak things. His left side was now entirely robotic. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing, as these limbs were high quality, far superior to his natural limbs. And then it was home time. Of course, swamp ninjas had to bother us just as we were approaching home. Green was quick to spot them and open fire. The fight was easy, but then we had blood spiders to deal with next. It was like these things didn't want us getting home. Too bad for them though, because they weren't stopping us. We were home. Now would spark an area of huge productivity, given the new facilities that had been built by Logan while we were away. We were going to begin a long process of phasing out our low quality equipment and armour and replacing it with the highest quality. We had also learned robotics and could start making our own robotic repair kits. We also had lots more science material to advance our research in due time. Now's a good time to show you exactly why we wanted coloured armoured rags. Certain faction characters have a colour scheme. We can dye our coloured armour their colour by placing it on them and then removing it. We can then remove the stolen attribute by placing it in a crossbow locker, and then the stolen is gone. We had made a hashish production, like the hounds wanted. We also finally got Zim a bionic arm. It wasn't the best, but it was better than nothing. We pushed forward with the research, including Tech Level 5. We would also begin making our own arrows. It made sense to make Green our arrowsmith, as he was our resident sharpshooter. We would eventually want to train more people to be sharpshooters, but for now, Green was our long-range support. And he was exceptionally good at what he did. It was time to take down the old workshop. This was going to be a bit of a nightmare to move, but we would change out Green's backpack to one of the large backpacks. That way you could hold all these weapons and carry them off to be sold. Well, job done. Now for the cleanup. While we clean up that mess, Zan headed out to the Nomads to buy a new dog. He adopted Crackle. And then, just as he was about to leave, it all kicked off. Beep came to help, but he brought some guests. It was Carnage. And it wasn't over. Zan vowed to never step foot in the Shem desert again. With our growing technology and infrastructure, we needed to put in more and more storage, including adding copper alloy. We upgraded the research bench to level 5. Griffin could theoretically craft an Edge Type 3 blade, but we needed more technology to allow him to do that. We also began crafting our own iron hats, which were much better than the shoddy ones we were wearing. We had new building types, and so we wanted to build a station house. More and more began helping Silvershade in armour crafting, as we needed to make plates, and eventually we were going to need to make chainmail too. That is when we had peace from Foolish Bandits. We unlocked higher weapon grades, and now Griffin could craft Mark II weapons. These were skeleton grade weapons, made by a mortal. It would take a lot of work to replace all our current weapons, but Griffin's will was strong. We would continue to unlock higher and higher weapon grades, while also crafting better and better armour. The new station house would be partly a training facility and mainly an advanced armour workshop. We were expanding into being able to craft our own crossbows, but we didn't have any blueprints yet. New Hope was now established as a major town on the world map. Time to install the new armour workshop, which will include chain, plate and leather. It will include multiple facilities for high productivity. We begin crafting chain helmets like Zukin's for our Sheik. We're beginning to look like we know what we're doing. It was time to have another run-in with the Black Dragon Ninjas. It just so happens that the Black Dragon Ninjas have a unique faction colour that we might want to use. Now that Looks pretty damn good. This would be our new colour scheme. It was time for another excursion. We were going to head back to the Venge Desert and find out what was there. We had found an ancient facility. Unbeknown to us was that this was the source of the Headless Thrall. Inside here was going to be our toughest opponents to date. In all the chaos, Zan lost his leg. But Big Joe always has a spare. In the heat of battle, we managed to replace it. It was over in an instant. We had somehow managed to defeat these legendary opponents. These were no ordinary skeletons. They were remnants of the Second Empire, and they were equipped with legendary weapons which were crafted by Cross. Auron is a saber user, so she takes Ponk's old saber. These are material class weapons crafted by Cross. Hammett takes the heavy polearm from Screamer the False. We'll repair and capture both of them, and we'll rest here for now. On the top floor, we find a skeleton kept prisoner in a cage. His name was Agnew. He couldn't speak in sentences, but we saw no harm in letting him out. As soon as we released him from his cage, he began following us. He was a new ally. We were always glad to have the strength of a skeleton on the squad. We began unlocking the containers and we found an absolute treasure trove of artifacts, including a much needed AI core. Actually, we ended up finding 3 of them. We also found 3 maps to 3 other ancient facilities. One in the west, one in the north, and one in the east. It was a hell of a haul, the material weapons being the highest prize of all. We would need to wait and rest in the facility until night to avoid the eye lasers. Zan was quite upset about his leg, but he had to let it go. The building seemed to protect us from the lasers, and soon it was night and we could leave the facility and head home. Beep and Argo seemed to be best friends straight away. The rest of us couldn't quite understand what the hell they were talking about. Hammett would get a bit twitchy whenever we passed slave mongers, but now wasn't a good time. We had to get these prisoners back home. Even unarmed, they were extremely dangerous. Not far now, we're almost home. We put our new prisoners in their cages. We were in no rush to hand them in for the bounty. Agnew had an interesting feature. He had his own faction colour. When coloured armour was placed on him, he would dye it blue. So now we had options on colour, but we were likely going to stick with the Black Dragon Black. We had him train up on robotics and he would need to learn to fight. His memory core must have been wiped and he had almost no skills at all. We'd fix that in due time. We unloaded the AI cores and all the research that we had collected. It was time for a new wave of technology, including hydroponics. We'd learn hydroponic vegetables so that we could make Gohan. But we'd also waste no time on going on our next excursion into the Black Desert. The entire squad would be acid-resistant hivers and skeletons, with the exception of Kyle, but he was wearing an iron hat and plate armour, which would protect him from the acid. Perhaps this whole excursion was a mistake. We had come back to try and get into this armory, which was full of security spiders. We'd try and bait them out, one at a time. One down. God knows how many to go. These things can hit hard, very hard. Then one snuck up on us from the war, but Green was quick to spot it. These outdoor ones were a slightly different version, but they were still pretty tough. We'd need to try and rest our wounds. Very funny story though. We forgot the sleeping bags. Again. Dr. Chung crafted some new ones while Zan ran back to collect them. His new leg made him pretty fast. Zan got back by the night and we could lay down the sleeping bags. We rested as best we could in this forsaken place. Back home, Logan was comfortably burning through the research. But it was time for us to finish what we came for. Soon, there was only 2 left, and we got overconfident. Burns had the impossible task of deciding who to treat first when everyone was severely wounded. What the hell had just happened in those brief moments? The spiders had ripped Beep's legs off and he was dying. We needed to replace his legs as soon as possible to save him. Fortunately, Joe carries a couple of spare. Even with the legs replaced, Beep's body had gone into severe shock. He wasn't going to get up for a long time. We moved the sleeping bags into the facility and we took some rest. We slept for a bit, but then Burns woke us up. He let us know that Green was dead. A security spider had crushed his chest and killed him instantly. There was nothing we could have done to have saved him. Death could often be the seed of new life, and Green was now a seed for this place. He had a strange attitude, but he didn't take a lot of convincing to join us, really.